Welcome back to our next episode of the Unlocking Dyscalculia podcast. Today I have Amanda VanDerHeyden and John Mighton with us, and their companies are collaborating on a new project. So Amanda VanDerHeyden is here with Spring Math, which is an intervention program, and then John Mighton's curriculum is Jump Math. And the two of them are working together now, and so we've invited them both so they can share with you what each program does and then how you can use them together. So just to start out with, let's start with John. John, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and your background?
Yeah, I'm a mathematician now, but struggled in math when I was younger. I almost failed calculus at university. I got into math in my 30s through a series of accidents, and wanted to help some local kids, so I started a tutoring club with friends, and we were dealing with some very challenged kids and saw some remarkable changes that I could talk about. And that led me to found a charity called Jump Math, and it eventually grew beyond my apartment and is now a core math program.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And then Amanda, will you share a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I really grew up in the world of MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support and response to intervention. And, reading has always, eaten all the energy in that space. And kids need to be able to do math. Math proficiency opens doors for children, and similarly, it can close doors for children. So it's it's a life right. I mean, children should come out of the K-12 experience proficient readers, no doubt, but also proficient in math. This is how we think. This is how we solve problems in the world. So I just became very passionate about helping a school district solve a math problem. And when I tried to buy what I needed, I couldn't buy it. And this is 20 some odd years ago. And I just began building and studying and publishing those results and in real time. And all of that eventually just led to this complete math MTSS product called Spring Math, which is a comprehensive, everything you need to do a complete math MTSS is in Spring Math, including, a lot of implementation support for the adults.
That's awesome. Yeah, because sometimes you do your testing and then there's no what's next. So right. I love that you've packaged those together. And so just for fun, John in particular has a story of his background that's not math related, but just kind of fun to get to know John. So John,
this is so unfair, by the way, just feeling bad about myself because this is the coolest story ever. Go ahead. Take it away, John.
Well, by a series of accidents, I ended up in the movie Good Will Hunting.
That's so cool.
And then by a series of accidents, I had one line, I think, when I started, but Stellan Skarsgård said one day, do you want some lines? And we started improvising. And so I ended up with quite a few lines that we kind of made up on the spot. So it was really fun. But I'm not a real actor. The day I had a scripted line, I could barely say it. They had to shoot it 5 times. The only reason I survived is because we were just saying things on the spot.
Very cool.
Hey, I'm glad you did Jump Math. To me, that's more important.
Yeah. And speaking of which, let's start with that one because that's kind of your whole class where you would start with instructions. So tell us, what is Jump Math and a little bit more about how it came to be.
Well, one of the first students in Jump, she'd been assessed as having an IQ of 70 at MID and testing at about a grade 1 level in grade 6. So I started developing micro-scaffolded lessons for her. And either she was very badly misassessed or something happened to her brain, because 3 years later, she went into academic grade 9 math, then she skipped a year, finished academic grade 10. So, and I started seeing there's a lot of kids that Amanda was talking about how important math is. I think everybody knows it's important for careers, for the health of our economy, but it literally rewires the brain. We just got an article from Adele Diamond, who's an expert in executive function and social emotional learning. She just did a study of Jump and found it changed kids' attitudes towards themselves, their resilience and things like that. So I think math is a gift to teachers, if they want equity, if they want to change kids' attitudes around themselves. And so I realized one day it was far more fun to do this with groups of kids rather than isolated kids, because they get excited together. So we took all the lessons we'd written and created a classroom program that's now grown. It's in about 6 or 7 countries. I can talk more about the method, but it's basically very structured inquiry. The kids are figuring things out all the time, but there's a lot of guidance from the teacher, and I'll talk more about how that works.
Right. So when you say the word inquiry, we're not talking about like discovery learning kind of thing here. This is a very structured kind of inquiry.
That's right. Yeah, the teacher leads by Socratic questions. So the kids are always on the edge of their seat, and trying to figure out, make the next connection by themselves as much as possible. But the teacher's asking the questions, and the teacher's assessing constantly, so they know exactly what the kids know. And they're also using bonus questions for differentiation. So if they need a little more time, teachers can create incrementally harder problems so that, they're like a ramp for the kids. All the kids feel an invitation to start going up that ramp. So it's, as they get stronger and stronger, like I saw this article in Nature magazine a while ago called the 85% rule for optimal learning. And they argue that we're happiest and learn most efficiently when we've almost got something. We're just stretching ourselves a little, like we're about 85% proficient, or some people call it the Goldilocks zone. So we realized that it was very hard for teachers to keep kids in that zone if they didn't have the right resources and the right scaffolding. But we found that as kids become more confident and they build schemas and the ability to see things instantly, that zone expands. So it becomes more like discovery-based learning, but that takes a long time.
Okay, so John, can you tell us more about how jump math is different than other curricula, and why is that a benefit?
So it's based on this idea of radical equity, that kids can do roughly the same things, almost all kids. But first you have to take away the hierarchies, because as early as grade 1, kids know where they are in a hierarchy. And if they decide they're not in a talented group, they pretty much give up and it becomes a vicious cycle of anxiety. So that means you have to go back to the right level. So we had a teacher whose work was reported in the New York Times. She took a very weak class in grade 5. Within 2 years, they all wrote the Pythagoras math competition. All but 3 got awards of distinction. But I'm also embarrassed to show people where she started. We didn't even assume the kids could subtract coming into grade 5. So to do patterns, if you have the number 2 and 5, we let the weaker kids just go 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the gap. And then they can count on. The differentiation for faster kids is just give them slightly harder patterns with missing numbers and so on. If you're scaffolding well, you can move so quickly with the weaker kids to bring them up grade level. Then within a few lessons, you can do T-tables and things that involve any kind of pattern. So you're up to grade level. So that's a radical difference. We've never seen a program that actually starts several years below grade level and follows very efficient paths to get kids up to grade level. We've never seen a program that doesn't put kids into ability groups or throw out problems that only work for the top kids. We use much more incrementally harder problems for kids, and that becomes like a ramp for even the ones who are initially slower. Like these kids wrote the Pythagoras within 2 years. It meant that everybody could do it. But if you don't start at the right level and if you don't scaffold that way and you don't build confidence, it's not going to happen for the lower half of the class.
Right, right. And when we say that jump math is an evidence-based curriculum, what does that mean? And are most school curriculums evidence-based?
When I was talking to some of our staff members today and they said that was going to be one of the questions, what's your response? I say, I'm going to laugh. No, I don't know of many programs besides Amanda's. For instance, I mean, districts will adopt programs with zero evidence, and these fads will sweep North America constantly.
Yes.
So we're very proud because we're listed on the Evidence for ESSA website based on one randomized controlled trial we participated in. It's very hard to get on that site. Amanda knows more about this than me. When she talks about jump, she has a much better idea of what the studies mean. We've had pretty high effect sizes in some of our randomized controlled trials, and even stronger results in some of our pilots. We did a massive study in England with about 700 behavioral and special ed kids every year. Only about 15% were at grade level, and every year 60% of them passed the national exams.
Yeah.
In grade 6. But the exciting thing was the teacher said the behavioral kids are now reprimanding the other kids because they want to get on with their lesson. They're so excited about feeling smart. So we have many, many studies, which is unusual, but also cognitive scientists, from what I know, Amanda knows more about this, but they're just tearing their hair out because no one will listen to them, and
Right.
so
Yes.
nobody's following the 85% rule.
Right.
Most kids are not spending.
And John, before cognitive science talked about it, behavioral science talked about
Right.
it. I mean, you were
Right.
talking about this earlier, and Gickling and Armstrong, 1978, demonstrated the 85% rule with real data and real kids in the space of reading. So it blows my mind. Yes, pulling hair out is a good way to think about it, but I mean, your data are outstanding. I mean, maybe I can say it for you because
Yeah, I love that.
you might not want to brag, but I'll brag. I mean, so I've been answering this question for years, and people will go, well, Amanda, what's a good core curriculum? And for years, my standard answer was, great news, it's a low stakes decision. None of them work. Pick the one you can live with, and then know you are going to have to supplement. Now I had to change my answer. So I have slides that show the effect sizes report, generally kind of crummy research for the most part. Very rare to have a well done randomized control trial like your fine data, John. I love your research data. And generally the effects, the strongest effect size before yours was a 0.11 for Saxon math. That's a small effect. So you get 4 to 6 times the effect of your nearest competitor, and the rest were closer to 0. So it's like, to me, it's just a no-brainer. And the way you get it, the reason you get it is because the design of your curriculum, it wasn't sausage making. You weren't making deals with the thought leaders. You designed it according to the science of how humans learn. Mm-hmm. And that's why it works. And the reason math is so lost in the United States with all the resources that we have is that teachers are really not well supported to deliver instruction in the space of math in particular in ways that it can actually work and cause learning when they deliver it. So that's that space, the advice, what they learn in their training programs, what they learn in professional development. Their curricula now have been developed to include these thought leader ideas about how people should learn. And, I saw a little post on LinkedIn from Carl Hendricks. The science of learning is about delivering instruction in a way that it is designed to produce learning when you do it. That's the definition of instruction. And it's not what we think should work. It's not what we want to work. It's what actually works according to the science. And math education is dominated by thought leaders who have very specific ideologies and ideas about how to deliver learning. Is just completely divorced from whether or not it happens to work. So there's a great paper, an early paper by Scott Baker and colleagues, and they examined math curricula that were beginning to come out around, 2000, 2002. And they included all of these kinds of things, and productive struggle and really constructivist methodologies. And their paper evaluated these effects. And it's a ringing indictment of those ideas in the teaching of math. But that is, unfortunately, nobody paid attention to those data, which were well replicated by a number of independent research teams that found math curricula are not designed according to the principles of effective instruction. And therefore, teachers are really lost. They're really lost. This is exactly what happened in the early days with reading. So the Lucy Calkins of math is alive and well, and it's probably in your child's classroom, but it's not in jump math. So, and to my knowledge, jump math is the only example of a highly effective math curriculum that was designed according to the science of how humans learn. And by the way, I'm a behavioral psychologist. What is so exciting to me is you have 2 separate fields, cognitive psychology, behavioral psychology, making discoveries using different methodologies and different theories, and sometimes giving the same phenomena different names. How exciting is that? That's profound evidence that things like what, cognitive psychs will call retrieval practice, behavioral psychs might call it master spaced or distributed practice, actually really works, and it's very important. And kids don't find these things boring. I mean, to John's point, the best way to have children have excitement about their learning is give them things that they can do, right? Yeah. And then increase the difficulty as they improve.
It's interesting what you said too about the fields coming together, behavioral and cognitive, because I just found these being in the trenches. I would be teaching in special ed classes, behavioral classes, gifted classes, the whole range. And for instance, we discovered the importance of continuous assessment early on. But then I found that if we had 4 questions on an assessment, if I just told the kids the first 2 questions are my expectation, I don't care about the rest. Then immediately, no one was waiting for work. The kids who were initially slower were always getting perfect on their assessments. They didn't compare themselves to the other kids because I said I'm a slow mathematician and speed doesn't matter. So I took away those hierarchies. As long as they were meeting my expectations, we found that was enough. And so everything came together, both the scaffolding, because you have to also be micro scaffolding for them to constantly have success. But then I noticed it had an impact on behavior.
Oh, yes.
And the most exciting thing was, though, I'm a playwright, so I saw the kids as an audience when I first started doing this. And it was so much more fun than teaching kids individually because Durkheim called it collective effervescence. We will never feel anything more intensely than when we feel something in a group or experience something as a group. And when you have the only advantage of putting 25 kids in a room is that they're a great audience. And if you have hierarchies and only a few kids with a low floor, high ceiling problem actually able to answer it or, show off, you throw away that group effect and that group effervescence. So these things all converged as I was doing demo lessons. And one of the problems I think was a lot of commercial publishers and developed by gurus, they're not going to walk into a behavioral class and test this out with kids who are very violent or even walk into a gifted class where you have to be trying different things. Yeah. We've been in the trenches for 20 years across North America trying to learn what will work, not only for the kids, but the teacher, because that's a whole other issue. Teachers need support also.
Well, and we find I've worked always, my whole career in RTI and MTSS and the determination of eligibility for special education in the United States, usually through the path of being labeled with a learning disability. And my major professor, who was Joe Witt at LSU, just one of the most brilliant human beings on the planet, he used to say in the 1990s, because back then LD was skyrocketing, went up 300% in a decade. Right. And kids did not have better outcomes. So that would have been fine if, as a result of getting the label, you got dynamite outcomes, but that didn't happen. But guess what? Learning is learning is learning. And if you can engineer learning in any human, in any space, you can engineer learning. That's it. Yeah. So the fact that we call one kid special ed, the language we use is every kid can beat their score from the day before. So it is about growth, and every kid can grow. And in our randomized control trials, when we look at kids on IEPs who participate in class-wide intervention with general education peers, they go from a 40% pass rate on the year-end state test to 80%, just like everybody else. And this doesn't surprise me, but back to Joe Witt's comment, Joe Witt used to say, it's not LD, it's ABT. And we're like, well, what's ABT? Ain't been taught. Mm-hmm. And so the notion that anybody, exposed to a crummy math curriculum, and then in the name of support, somebody takes you out of the class and goes through the same lesson, more slowly with you, and that's supposed to be your intensification opportunity in RTI, that's not LD or dyscalculia. That is ABT. You have not been taught. And this to me is why it's, I still get mad. I always say when I'm not mad anymore, I'll retire, but I'm still mad about it because most children in this country don't have stable access to highly effective instruction in math. Yeah. It's criminal. It's just a sort of a decision. It's something that can be fixed. It's low hanging fruit. And in my world in school psychology, we talk a lot about equitable assessment. Okay. And I say all the time to my colleagues, you will never assess your way to a more equitable outcome in the absence of stable access to highly effective instruction, which is the right of every child in this country, in reading and in math. And we finally got parents mad enough that this gave birth to the science of reading, and we have seen improvements. People were being held accountable for recommending untested ideas, recommending things that could not work. And in math, we are still in that space. There is one good journalist that I love. Her name is Holly Corby, and she writes about this problem a lot, and she's brilliant. I love the way she thinks about things. But if parents only knew, and parents are vulnerable, it's back to school all over the country now in the US. And, you're going to have parents in the next 2 weeks whose kids are going to bring home homework that's poorly designed. Okay. And it's not aligned with what kids are ready for. And then the parents are going to say, oh, I just don't understand this new math. Right. And something must be wrong with my child. Yeah. And most likely it's ABT.
I'm so glad you made that point. And parents really don't know, because it's not just you want your kids to do a little better or feel a little better in math. Like, what if every kid could learn math almost without exception? And I've taught some incredibly challenged kids.
Yeah.
I was once speaking to some teachers at a conference, and I said, why, when you divide 7 by 2/3, are you allowed to flip and multiply? Someone yelled out, because you get the right answer. Oh. And unfortunately, a lot of teachers don't have a good explanation. It's either just rule-based. So I invited a math-phobic teacher to come up on stage, and I asked them 5 minutes of questions, and they derive it from first principles, like no problem. And they say, how come we don't know this? This is absolutely trivial.
Right.
So when you're saying parents don't know, they don't know that math should be the most accessible subject to every kid. There's no reason the vast majority of kids
it's not magic.
Most kids in special ed classes are just misassessed. They just haven't been taught.
That's right.
And math is, I wrote a book called All Things Being Equal, because I argued that math is the key to equity. We've had trouble bringing about fair, sustainable economies, because I think or even establishing like material equality, because we've missed one of the deepest root causes, which is intellectual inequality. And in math, you can eradicate that real quickly if you have good, if you don't make up some crazy explanation of why you flip and multiply. If you actually show kids why you flip and multiply, within 10, 15 minutes, they can derive most of that themselves, an entire class. So
there's so many practices now that teachers are forced to do, or the crummy curriculum drives them to have to give the lesson, and the whole thing is squandered. It's like, if you could have that bandwidth back into your life as a teacher, you could give your children much more benefit. Okay. And you do find these. I was in Maryland last week working at a school, and there was a very seasoned math teacher, and she was working with a very well-known curriculum, which is not effective. And she starts showing me, well, this is what I'm supposed to do on day 1, and this is what I'm supposed to do on day 2. And her younger, less experienced colleagues are at the table, and basically she's modifying it. She's taking this curriculum in real time, and she's not delivering it precisely as she has, she's been trained to do. She's saying, well, I have to do what actually works for students. So she's very quickly going through the discovery problem. That's too hard. That's not accessible. That invites misunderstanding as much as it invites correct understanding. And she's basically moving that process to the phase of learning that we would call generalization. I forget what you called it when you were in your opening comments, John, but it's that idea that, you take the inquiry, the discovery, the challenge. We behavioral psychs will call that as a generalization opportunity. And you don't give that to children until they have demonstrated mastery level performance on the component skills.
Right.
Right. And the problem is, this is the cognitive psychs will call out, like Paul Kirshner will call out the problem of trying to teach novice learners like they're expert learners, right? And that's the same idea. In behavioral psychology, we're going to say you're trying to give generalization type instruction to kids who are in the acquisition stage of learning. And that is exactly how discovery, inquiry, and productive struggle are recommended, deployed, built into curricula. And it is completely, reliably predicted to worsen learning.
Yeah.
How is that the case?
Right. This is a good time to talk about spring math then, a little bit more about how it was developed, what it does, maybe how it's different from other types of assessment or intervention programs.
Yeah. Well, I guess it is my life's work, and I started building pieces of it in the late 90s and right around it's funny to say the turn of the century. It makes me feel so old. But right around 2000, and I ended up I was a district leader in a system in Arizona, Vail, Arizona, and this is the first year they had just gotten year-end state test scores. Okay, brand new. It was a brand new idea. It was rattling states, okay, and districts. And the data didn't look very good for math for this system. I didn't know that. I had just been hired. And I said, okay, well, the first thing we do is we screen every student in reading, writing, and math. And did that, ran that, and came back to the leaders and said, well, we have a math problem. And they said, that's what last year's test data said. And I said, okay, well, and then they said, what are we going to do about that? And I said, okay, well, let me get back to you on that. Let me go find what I can buy. And, I couldn't buy what I needed. And so, I could have my collection of things, but it was a long way from having enough resources to really support teachers to do a full, what we now call MTSS, and we were calling it something else back then. But anyway, that's where I really started and built class-wide math intervention, all the pieces of that. And the reason I did that is because there was so much math risk, and I just knew as a screening researcher, when you have a high prevalence of risk, you can't figure out who needs individual intervention. You will miss kids. You will make bad decisions. You have to bring the base rate of risk down. So you have to reduce how much risk you have in that environment to enable an academic screening to function well. And that was the original purpose of class-wide math intervention. And I really wanted to do it because I needed a really efficient way to improve math performance for the whole school, and to do this rapidly so that I could get to individual intervention with kids. That's what I wanted to do, and I wanted to study at that time in my life. I was a researcher, and but I was working as a leader in this district full time. And anyway, what happened is we ran it so well that we only ever had 2% of the screened population ever require what we now call Tier 3 intervention in reading or math. They went from middle of the pack in the state to rank order position 1 in math achievement on the state test. Their learning disability rate went from 6% of their population in the first year to 3.5% the next year. A number of other things happened too that were really beautiful in terms of improving equity. Over-identification was a problem of males, I believe it was. There was a gender effect, and we sorted that out. So all of that just happened by delivering effective instruction at scale, which is what MTSS enables. So that's why I built it. I built it to solve a real problem in a real system. And when I moved on from there, I went to the University of California, and then I ended up moving and I've been independent for 18 years until I just bought Spring Math Accelerate with a group, which is lovely. It's very exciting. And that's all I've done is help systems figure out how to deliver more effective math instruction in real time using the structures of MTSS, which means we had to build universal screening. Turns out, people have tried to find the equivalent of oral reading fluency for math, and it does not exist. So Spring Math is built on, it's curriculum-based measurement, but it's mastery measurement. And the process that we use is actually patented. It's novel, it's patented. I had to create it because no one had done that yet. And then that assessment structure drives the rest of what we do and gives us continuous, touch points and data points. So we get a fully articulated MTSS that includes class-wide math intervention. We get most of our bang for the buck from class-wide math intervention because it touches all kids in the same 15 minutes to 20 minutes a day. And we get enormous gains on year-end state tests when we do this well. We get improvements on equity indicators. It's kind of stunning to me. I really built it as a quick and dirty mechanism so I could get to individual intervention. And what I ended up discovering is if you really do it well, you don't have to do that much individual intervention. And from class-wide intervention, we harvest those data in real time so we can be much more accurate about saying these are the kids who actually need tier 3 intervention. We guide you through the diagnostic. We give you the intervention packet for the week for the student. The teacher works with the student either in a small group. We will put kids in groups for you based on their data. Or if there's not an appropriate group for a student, then the teacher will work one-on-one with the student for 15 minutes per day. And everything is provided in a printable packet, including scripted activities to build conceptual understanding, all of the practice problems that they need for the day. And at the end of the week, the teacher will enter the scores on the assessments that are included in the packet. We graph their performance, we adjust the intervention, we give you new materials for the next week. All of this is feeding a coach dashboard in real time. So as leaders, you can see exactly what's happening in the name of MTSS and math in your school. You know exactly where class-wide intervention is occurring with what results in real time. Same thing for individual intervention. And we're telling you where it's in trouble. We're tracking dosage with some, again, patented metrics that we harvest that are not new assessment, but very clearly tell us where teachers need help. And then we say to the coach, go help in this classroom. You're not going to get a great result if you don't go and provide some support in this particular classroom. And the ultimate outcome of that is we can tell you who has had a successful RTI. So you can use these data to determine eligibility for an LD in math if that's where it goes. But really what we see it as is just a better way to assist the teacher to be a more effective instructor in real time. We just view the teacher as the heart and soul of the action. They are the center of the world for us, and all of these models where you try to replace a teacher with a computer have terrible data. All of them. I could call them all out. And if they had worked, I wouldn't say that. I would have a different attitude about it because it would have been very tidy, wouldn't it? If we could have just put every kid on a computer and then the learning magically happens, that would have been great. But there's a very inconvenient fact, which is that they produce abysmal effects, as bad as most math core curricula minus John's. So like in the range of 0 to 0.05, like these are negligible effects on student learning. And to me, that is so criminal because most parents and systems and even leaders will say, okay, what are we doing for our math problem? Well, we bought everybody, and they will name some digital platform. And if I'm in the room, I'm like, well, you just waste it. That is not going to produce the benefit that you want, you know? So what we do is instead of trying to replace the teacher, we are really trying to support that teacher in real time. And having worked in RTI since the 1990s, I can say that in my experience, the hardest part of that is this ongoing database decision making. Even veteran systems will experience fatigue or drift. You are never one and done on the implementation support. You could, even in like a Vail where I worked for 3 years, when I left, they'll tell you they had some drift on various components, and then they have to shore it up, come back and shore it up and retrain. You've always got new teachers in the mix. So I think the thing that technology can change, I'm optimistic on this, that technology, the place for technology in education is not to put kids on computers or devices. The place for technology in education is to make excellent teaching easier for teachers to deliver. And one of the ways you can do that is giving them better assessments, automating all data interpretation. We should not have adults sitting in rooms having analysis paralysis around mountains of data anymore. If I can teach you how to interpret those data, we can write algorithms to do it. You can overrule it. We've got some flexibility in our system that if you don't like we will recommend who needs individual intervention. But we also allow coaches to directly put kids into individual intervention if they want to. We give them that flexibility, but I'll also tell you, we're never wrong. We don't miss anybody. So I do tell systems, because we're in year 10. We track this in real time. We calculate this classification accuracy all the time. So I'm very comfortable saying to systems, you can trust our recommendations. The mistake that we make, the error that we have, is we still sometimes recommend kids who didn't actually need intervention. Okay, so that's called a false positive error. What we don't make are false negative errors. So, if you want to put somebody in intervention, fine. But if we did not recommend them for individual intervention, I'm just telling you they didn't need individual intervention. Do what you want, but right? So it's the data automation that's so important. Think about how much time adults spend talking about assessment data and what to do with kids, and how you lose bandwidth to actually do the harder work, which is day in, day out, delivering a sufficient dosage of the intervention that students need.
That's awesome. And I love that both of these programs really help make it so that kids are getting what they need in the beginning. Because we see kids all the time who have made it all the way to high school and they still need help with skills like subtraction with regrouping. Right. And it's because they never got the instruction that they needed. And so with programs like yours, we don't have as many kids needing this intensive intervention. And we're more accurately finding the ones who do. They're not waiting until high school to be identified. These kids can be identified right at the beginning and be getting what they need.
Yeah.
Well, Amanda and John, how did it come to be that spring math and jump math are kind of working together and collaborating a little bit? How did that come to be, and what does it look like?
Well, I will say, for years, people told me I should know John. I don't know if people told John that about me, but they're like, how do you not know John Mighton? So we met when I went to speak in Toronto for Research Ed. And then I started looking at their data and I'm like, oh my goodness, these people were right. This is outstanding. Where is this product being used, And of course I got to hear John speak and I bet you do this a lot when you present. I've seen you present a couple times now where you teach a live math lesson to the room. Mm-hmm. And it's so powerful. And so I think from that moment for me, it was easy to say, I want to support this work, and at least now I have a good answer for when people go, well, which math, what's a good core math curriculum? It's easy for me to wholeheartedly recommend Jump Math. And I guess we approached you all, I think, about working with us more formally.
Yeah, and I was excited because of your results and your data. And also, one of the central problems in Jump Math, I think, is that to get teachers thinking like tutors, where they think I could teach to mastery, I can go back to the right level. Teachers can do that individually, but when they're in front of a class, they've been trained not to. Mm-hmm. They've been trained to just let kids find their levels or whatever. And so one of our biggest implementation issues in Jump Math is, we have a section on mental math in our teacher's guide, and we have lessons where that division lesson where all the questions are there for the teachers, even on slides that they can project, but still getting them to think like a tutor and take responsibility for every child in the class and think that every child could have mastery. That's a stretch, especially when they're learning Jump. So Spring Math is fantastic because it's a system set up that they have to take care of the kids who are in the lower half of the class, and all kids, but they have to, there could be all kids struggling with something, that they have to know who needs to know something and have a method and have help with intervening. So it's a perfect complement to Jump, I think, and that's why we were really excited to work.
Yeah, I mean, we've never had the privilege of being installed upon an effective curriculum. And for us, it's difficult because we go into systems and we're designed according to the science. But, if they're not using Jump Math, the math curriculum they are using is most likely not designed according to the science. And so then we spend a good bit of our time and bandwidth sort of re-educating around these mythical understandings that they have in their mind, like you can't teach the algorithm, like explicit instruction doesn't work for students. Are you kidding me? It has the strongest effect size in any all education tactics. Explicit instruction, formally direct instruction has the strongest effect sizes on student learning. So to blow that off and say it only works for special ed kids, and then you realize the reason they say that is because somebody told them that. And the reason somebody told them that is maybe they had a conflict of interest, but also maybe they misunderstood that papers that are published, like I've published 100 papers over my academic career and chapters, well over 100. And I don't tend to publish like in general education outlets. I publish in special education, in psychology. And the reason I do that is those are the better journals. But I also do not select kids just with disabilities. I always study the universal population of learners and anybody who meets our risk criterion in terms of performance, which is 75% of eighth graders in this country. Okay. So it blows my mind when people go, that only explicit instruction only works for special ed kids. That's not true. In fact, one of the ways you can avoid special education is use explicit instruction with all of your students. And if you like discovery, you like productive struggle, fine, use it, but treat it like a generalization opportunity. You know?
Yeah.
So if people are interested in Jump Math or Spring Math, who are these programs available to? Because we have listeners, some who are homeschool parents, some who are school teachers, some even all over the world. So who can access these programs?
Well, anyone can access Jump Math. We have thousands of parents using it, either just to help their kids, or some homeschoolers are using it. So on the Jump Math website, jumpmath.org, you can find how to get the program. But our main focus is schools and whole classrooms. And we work in 7 countries. We're growing across North America now. We meet local curricula, so teachers can use it as a core program, as their only program, and that's just available off our website. We also, as a charity, we're a charity, which is kind of unusual.
Yeah.
We often offer free training and embedded training, and as much as people want, because we want, the data speaks for itself once you get teachers trained to the point where they can use it really well.
And what about Spring Math? Who can access that?
So our website is springmath.com, springmath.org, either one works, will take you to us. So Spring Math is available through the website. We're priced at the student level. We often have systems that will, start with a certain number of licenses and then expand. What we counsel systems not to do is please don't try to use another screening system, lob off your bottom 20% according to that screening, and buy us to just deliver, small group or individual intervention. We work because all of it talks to each other. So you have to do, like, screening is our entry point. We outperform all the screenings on the market in math. You're not doing better by using another different screening. Ours are equal to or superior to everything that's out there, and mostly superior to everything that's out there. So we want you to do all of the pieces of it, because that's how you get the result on the other side. And class-wide intervention works best when it is delivered universally to all students. If we screen a class and they don't need it, we will tell you that. And then we can go right to diagnostic assessment, small groups, and individual intervention. But that is very rare. Most classes in the United States go into class-wide intervention. And now we're very proud to be growing in Canada. And in Canada, most classes are going into class-wide intervention.
So for our homeschool parents or our private tutors who do a little bit of one-to-one, can they access Spring Math, or do they have to have enough people grouped together for a group license?
Well, we do require a minimum number, and it's 50 licenses, but our price point is fairly reasonable. We have a range. We're based on volume, and we do that on purpose because we're trying to disincentivize people from trying to pick their own bottom 20 and give, because they think they're saving money. I get that. But what they're doing is they're working with the wrong students, and they're working with them in a way that you're compromising the effects. So to disincentivize that, we give you a lower price point, with greater volume. So we did have a little tiny kind of system down in Florida it's kind of probably one of those little schools that came out during COVID and got going. And she doesn't even have 50 kids in the school, but she bought 50 licenses so she can. But again, we are also the least expensive thing on the market. So I don't feel bad about that. Like in the early days, when we first started, we were $5 per kid per year, and we would sell you 2 seats if you wanted. You know? And if one kid finished intervention and was successful, we would let you take that one out and put a new kid in without any, into that same, like we didn't know what we were doing. We were not profitable, but profits are how we invest and do better work and add features. So profits are important because all of that goes back into the product for us. And I was with a government organization for a long time until this past summer when we became a more agile, separate, nimble company. And I'm excited for that because I think we're going to be able to have faster innovation.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, we're about out of time, but is there anything else that we didn't cover about Jump Math or Spring Math today that either of you wanted to share?
Well, I created it with Barbara Oakley, who's one of my heroes, a course called Making Math Click about math and the brain. And that's come out on Coursera. So we're very excited about that. We've developed a preschool program that I'm very excited about, that the YMCA in Canada is rolling out in daycares across Canada. So you can find Jump is changing very quickly, and we're always creating new materials, so you can find updates on those things on the website.
It was so fun to have both of you. Well, to wrap up, we usually share some kind of fun joke or meme or pun. And so, John, I think you brought something for us today.
Well, it's a bit of a sad joke because it was when I was tutoring, I had this absolutely brilliant student, maybe the most brilliant I ever worked with. But I found it really hard to teach him because he was so brilliant and he'd failed for so many years, and he was so successful in every other area that it was really hard for me to get him to do math. And this is one of the reasons we switched from individual tutoring to whole class, because when those kids are in a whole class, they get caught up in the excitement. So I'm going to read you something. He had to do this test on parabolas, and he was given the equation: would it shift up and down? This is what he wrote. This I don't know, as to whether or not the former will shift up or it will not. The latter may shift down towards the bottom of the page. That's all you could ask for, I guess. People who are actually interested in this sort of thing, math I mean, would be fascinated by this illusory downward shift. However, I don't find it very absorbing. And then later he wrote, the first doesn't do anything. The second is stretched by 0.1 and goes up, insofar as it can go up in the sort of insecure quasi-reality that mathematicians through the ages have created for it. Like, that's what he'd write on his test.
And that's an obviously brilliant student. So those are students we want to reach.
No, that was wow. Wow.
Well, thank you so much to both of you for coming to share about Jump Math and Spring Math. And in the notes on the blog post, we will link to all of these things that you're mentioning so that people can go check it out and see how they can use it at their schools.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.